In a large application, you may need more separation to keep your architecture clean, or at the very least, to keep your application's code base better organized. Now, you can introduce areas, and as you have different areas in your website, you can have a different view layout template, different user permissions, different routing patterns, different models, and so on in each area. Now, you can think of an area as a mini ASP.NET MVC website, just all combined into the same physical project. Now, it's important to note that there's nothing that you can do with areas that you couldn't already do without areas. However, it can keep your code base more organized and more obvious, so it's a good thing to introduce if you have a need for it. So, for example, you could use different layout templates, different permissions, different routing patterns, and so on a controller-by-controller basis. However, areas simplify and require less explicit code to accomplish this very thing. So you might want to create areas for functionality for different tasks or different users. And the canonical example is an admin area for your website. Now, I might create an admin area for the business owners of the website, but the customers can't get into it. Again, I could do this without areas, but the beauty of areas is that it makes this separation obvious, and it requires that I type less code and less configuration to get it all to work. So the important thing to remember here is that this is typically something you add on to the root of your website. So you're still going to use your project's root, controller model, and view folders for the default, or what do you want to call it, the main area of your website, but you usually add areas to the default area or the root level area of the website in order to add on additional functionality like admin area, for example. All right, now to add a new area, it's pretty easy to do. Just right click on the project title, go to add, and area will be at the top, and you give the area a name. Now, I've already done that for this area example. As you can see here, I've created an area called admin. Let me roll it all up here. So I created a new area called admin, and when I do that, notice that it adds a controllers folder, a models folder, a views folder, and then it creates this admin area registration.cs file. Let me pull all this back over here because I needed the space a moment ago, but let's get it back in line here. All right, so and then at this point I'm adding controllers and views and models exactly the same way that I did before. Now, I can even reuse models at the root level, and so to kind of illustrate what I'm doing here, let me just run the application that I've created, and you can kind of see what's going on. So at the root level, I have a storefront with products, and we've seen this example already. I kind of just stole most of this, where I can, go in and add items to a shopping cart and buy them conceivably, but I don't have any of that functionality created. However, if I had the proper permissions, I could go to the admin section and then go ahead and change the price of a given item. Like I could change Quirk from $16.95 to $15.95, and then when I go back to the store, you'd be able to see that Quirk has changed its price. Okay. Now, ideally, what we would do is probably password protect this, and so we could authenticate the user, know who he is, and then give that user permissions as the admin, or it could be a user or super user to write reviews or whatever the case might be. All right, so let's get back into the project itself. And you'll notice here that in order to implement this, I added a home controller, and I added a couple of views. In fact, I just went and let it do the scaffolding and create all the views for me, and all the and the controller itself too. So there's really nothing special inside of here. The only thing that's interesting inside of here is that in the _layout.cs HTML file, you can see that I implemented, or I added, where did I do that? Okay. You can see that I went to Bootswatch and I got this slate CSS file, and so this is a file that sits on top of Bootstrap, and it just styles up some of the given tags in the Bootstrap CSS. All right, so that's all I did here, and that's how I got that, how it looks so dramatically different on the layout page. But these layout pages, or rather the admin area, will use this layout inside of my admin area. However, everything else will use the old layout that we've been looking at in this entire series. Okay. Now, to implement this, what I need to do is, and be aware of this, it creates the controllers, models, and views folders, and then it creates this file called admin area registration. So it's going to create, if you create a billing area registration, it'll create one of these files as well for every area that you add. And what this is simply doing is just registering the area and then giving me an area where I can actually add routes. You'll notice one thing I'm doing on this route here is I'm actually adding a namespace to it. So when this route is detected, it's going to look for the home controller inside of this namespace, all right, as opposed to the home controller inside of the root namespace. Now, if you take a look, so that file was generated for us in the area, but then also what we want to take a look at is in the app start, you can see that I have the home controller, and I'm looking at the namespace for areaexample.controllers. All right, so I have to make sure that I'm adding namespaces if I'm going to create two home controllers or two controllers with the same name. Okay, and then the other thing that I want to do or to point out here is that in the global.asax, I have to make a call right before register routes to register all areas, and this is going to go into every area folder, and it's going to look for that area configuration file. Let's get back into it. So it's going to look for this in every area, and so that it can register that particular area. And so once I have this area separated out, again, I can apply different permissions to it. I can create different models that are exclusive to this area, add views that are exclusive to this area, controllers that are exclusive, and all of the conventional settings that I need for an admin area as opposed to one of the other areas on my website. So it's going to add, again, as one of the benefits I pointed out was that by employing those conventions, I'm able to get a lot of functionality without having to explicitly add that to every single action result method in my entire application, like I would if I just implemented an admin area with its own controller inside of the root controllers. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about areas. It's a useful technique to, again, keep your code base clean and to employ conventions that are different than the root level conventions in your website. All right. So we'll pick it up in the next lesson. See you there.